Okay.
Myself.
Yeah, no, that's great. So yeah, if you guys want to mute yourselves, you know what, I will do the introductions because I know everybody. And I think mostly everybody knows each other. So Kathy, I saw this afternoon, correct? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Kathy that I saw this afternoon. Jennifer is, she rides with us with mountain bike and cross. She's one of the women's riders. Darla's been riding with us for a couple years now, and she's been volunteering at the cross. And Susan beat me yesterday. I'm just teasing you, Susan.
It was a good race.
You fully deserve to be. And then is that you, Sarah?
Yeah, it is.
Hi. And Sarah, I've never met you, but we've talked and discussed over a few things before. So I think maybe somebody else joined. So just give me 1 second and then we'll get started. Okay. And there's the Sherry and Phoebe. I see you just joined. Welcome. Where are you from? That's okay. You can join us later.
Sorry. Hi, Kathy. This is Sherry. Sorry.
Oh, hi, Sherry. Nope. Glad you can join us.
Thank you for doing this.
Great. All right. So, well, my name is Kathy Hanshrow. Most of you know me. I've been working at Bruce's for about 3.5 years. I moved here from Edmonton about 4 years ago and became a mechanic. Still learning every day. Wonderful environment to learn from. And I just wanted, and I've kind of introduced everybody else, and it's easiest to do it that way because turning on and off the mute button. Anyway, so welcome to SAS Women's Week. It's awesome. Tomorrow is going to be a talk about different clothing you can, clothing, chamois, different terms that are in the cycling world. Wednesday is, it's the International Mountain Bike Association. They're going to be doing a quick talk on mountain biking in Saskatchewan. Thursday is Keely Shaw is going to be doing some nutrition guidelines. And on Friday is Mel Stevenson's going to be doing training. So welcome everybody else that's just joining us now. My name's Kathy Hanshrow. I'm so glad that there's so many people coming. So the rules, you know the rules on Zoom. We're pretty clear on those now. But yes, stay muted unless you need to say something. Please, any questions that you have, just ask. What I'm kind of asking you guys to do is just say ding, like a bicycle bell, and then I can get back to you later. And if you don't want to do that, write your question down and send it to me afterwards, and or ask me at the end. What else did I want to write? I wasn't sure how many people would be joining, so I didn't know the audience, how many people were gonna be here, what skill level you are. So I'm kind of gonna do generic basic, but it's something you'll learn something from, and you'll learn how to learn afterwards. I'm going to try and keep it to an hour. So, well, I will keep it to an hour, but if there's any questions or people want to find something else out, please let me know. All right, so that's the rules. And here is the outline. So, first of all, we're going to do generic home maintenance that you need to do every summer. So we won't hit on winter riding at all for this course, but for summer, you bring it out in the spring and you put it away in the fall, what you need to do to keep your bike working for that full summer. So that's one. And then kind of changing the bike on the road or on the trail, what you need, how to do it. Yeah, I've had a couple of experiences with that this summer. Actually, I've had a lot of experiences this summer, even though I haven't been riding as much as I usually do. And then thirdly, disc brakes are becoming more and more the norm, whether you're a road rider, cross, cycle, mountain bike, it's more prevalent. But another thing I've had a lot of trouble with this year is squealing brakes. So why they squeal and some ways to fix it, either at home or through your bike shop. Okay, so if there's anyone, and I'm just going to turn on my chat. That's another thing. I'm a little bit far away and I'm getting old with my eyeballs. So, but I'll turn the chat on and see if somebody wants to write something. The other thing is, what I wanted to ask you guys, if there is something that you really wanted to learn tonight, I'm not going to ask everybody what they wanted to learn, but write it down, ding, give me the question. It might be just something really quick that we can figure out, or I can again teach you how to learn how to do it. So, well, let's get started. So maintenance and once overs. So spring, you're getting your bike out. You're either going to bring it to the shop for a tune-up, or you're going to do it yourself. Depends on how confident you are. Even if you had a tune-up like July, August, September, and you think, I probably don't need one this year, you're going to want to go through all the points of the bike. So just make sure that your bike is working well, and that's squeezing the brakes, going for a short ride behind your garage to make sure the gears are all shifting properly. Number one always is you've got enough air in your tires. Whether you're running tubeless or with a tube, that is usually the biggest problem on the road, is your tires flat out or you don't have enough pressure in them and they just start running well. So that's the first thing. You just look it over. If you bring it to the shop, we'll start it over again. Start the year off fresh with a good tune-up, or just make sure you're going through each point in what I'm going through today. So the first one, you're getting on your bike's all ready to go. You've done the initial checkup. Daily this is something you do every time you ride. Squeeze. So you're going to be, can you see? Yeah. We're going to be squeezing the brakes, making sure that they're stopping the wheels. You're going to be squeezing the tires. Squeezing the tires doesn't always, especially road riders, tell you if your tires are full enough, but daily, that's more than enough. If you've got good pressure, you'll start to know. So that's daily. You're going to just do a once over with your eyes, make sure everything's ready to go. Weekly, you're going to check your tire pressure with a gauge or a tire pump. So most tire pumps have a gauge on them. You're going to make sure that your pressure is up to where it needs to be. People that run tubeless, and again, if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, what's tubeless, please ask. It's basically you're not running with a tube inside the tire, more like a car tire. Tubeless runs at a less pressure, but they need more maintenance. You've always got to make sure that the pressure is higher. So that's weekly. You want to make sure that those tires are filled up to the pressure that they're supposed to be, looking visually with a gauge. So semi-monthly, so once every 2 weeks, you're gonna need to lube your chain. So that's just preventative maintenance. You're gonna lube your chain every 2 weeks. The exceptions to those rules is if it gets wet and muddy and you have to clean your bike off, you're gonna lube your chain, even if you did it the day before. Other exceptions are if you can hear that chain squeak, 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 or click, 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 you're gonna wanna put some lube onto that too. You can over lube, but if you lube it properly, you usually won't do that. So you're gonna get your tire lube. You can use whatever you want. We like the muck off, but that doesn't matter. And you can do this on the ground. It doesn't have to be in a stand. You're gonna get it in the right gear, and then you're gonna pedal it backwards slowly. And you're gonna put the chain oil on here. I'll just do it forward for here because it's not doing that. And you're gonna just do it about this speed, so you can see me rolling forward, and you're gonna drip the oil onto the chain. Then you're gonna wait about 2 minutes, and then you're gonna get a rag or a cloth, and you're gonna take it and put your hand or your 2 fingers on the outside of the chain, and you're literally gonna rub off half of that oil. You only need the chain oil on the circles on the inside. The links on the inside are all that really need the chain. So if you rub all of this, the excess off, you will not have a problem with over oiling. And the biggest problem you have is you start to get yuck in the derailleur, in the circles in the derailleur here, in the little, I can't think of the word, anyway. So that's the bi-weekly. You're gonna wanna oil your chain. That keeps it working fresher, keeps it running smoother, and will make it last a little bit longer. Bi-monthly, so every other month, you're gonna wanna tighten bolts. Now, that is a really confusing thing that I remember before I started doing mechanics. There are quite a few screws on your bike that you just don't wanna touch. And that's like, especially the derailleur, there's limit screws that make sure that your derailleur doesn't fall over the edge of your cogs on either side. You don't want to touch those. You don't want to touch these. If there's a derailleur on the front, you don't want to touch them on here. The main place you want to be checking your screws is the front stem, holding your handlebar, because you don't want to lose your handlebar, and also here on behind the stem bolts here. This top bolt you do not want to touch either. Doesn't matter if you do or not. It won't affect anything when everything's tightened up, but it's just these back bolts and the bolts on the front of the handlebar. And you're just the best way to do it is with a torque wrench. And a torque wrench is something that only tightens something to a certain torque. So these bolts here are supposed to be 5 Newton meters. This is a 5 Newton meter torque wrench. So if you go to twist it, it'll pop once it's gotten to the tightest, to as tight as it's supposed to go, and won't turn anymore. So you know you've got it in the right. You know you've got it at the right tightness. If you only have an Allen key and not the torque wrench, torque wrenches you can buy at any bike shop. They're about $25. But if you've only got an Allen key, which is more than fine, you're just going to make sure it's not loose. You're not going to screw it in as tight as you can, but just kind of a little, like, 1/8 of a turn, and make sure nothing's going to fall off like you. Okay, how's everything going? Any questions, or everybody good? Okay. And then, like I said at the beginning, yearly. Yearly, you're going to want to either at least do it, or not at least. You're going to want to do a tune-up at home, or you're going to want to do a tune-up at the store, any bike shop. The maintenance of a yearly tune-up really helps with checking out things that are wearing out. And if you wear one thing out, many times it'll wear other things out. Many times that's not true, but the biggest wear out problem that can wear out other things is if your chain wears out or stretches too much, it will eventually wreck the back cassette. And now that these back cassettes are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, they're getting more and more expensive. So you're always going to want to check the chain. And any bike shop, you can bring it in and we'll check it, no problem. Make sure that it's in the right, that you're not going to run out of chain by the end of the season. And it's just something like this. It's called a chain checker. And you put it in just to make sure that it hasn't, it's not wearing out. So if you can catch it before it wears out too much, you won't have to replace the cassette. Okay, so that's it for daily, weekly, monthly. But then last 2 points I have is keeping it clean and storage. Make sure you have a good place to store your bike, especially right now at the bike. Well, not right now, at this time of year, but this year was a bad year for theft. And there's nothing you can do when your bike gets stolen. Insurance doesn't cover it very well. And when it's stored, you even usually want to lock it up as well with a bike lock. Last thing is keeping it clean. So if you go out on a wet, muddy, dirty day, rinse it off. If you've got a hose in the backyard, just rinse it off. Best to just use water in a rag, especially if you've got disc brakes, because as you will find out when we get to the last section, that is something that can get contaminated quite easily, even just with soap or oil or muck or mud. So rinse off your bike. It also helps with your maintenance, because you wipe it down with a wet rag, you're like, oh, what is that? And you can find something before you get hurt or your bike gets hurt. Okay, so that's that for maintenance. Again, is there any questions for you? No problem. But yeah, write them down if you have them, and we'll get to it later on in the session too. All right, moving right along. So tire changes. So I was going through this with Susan. She works here at the shop with me, and I was going to do the whole tire change, how to do it, and then we decided we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Haha. So I will put up a link to the Park Tools website, and it has amazing YouTube videos on anything you can think of. Actually, if you just Google Park Tools space how to, you'll see like many come up, and you just how to change a tire. And it's a wonderful video with bright lights and cameras and actors and the whole bit. But we'll definitely go through things that we need to do if we're changing a tire, not in the comfort of our own home or bike shop. So again, personal experiences this year. This last week I had to change a tire at the cyclocross race for one of the participants who had nothing with them, and that's very unusual for the people we know that are at these races. He had changed bikes and didn't change the seat pack, so we got him going. But one thing again Susan and I were talking about is that it's a lot easier to get somebody to help you change the tire if you've got a tube to change it with. Sometimes it's harder to get somebody to help if you don't have a tube for them. So when you are riding, you are always going to want to have something to hold your equipment in. A tire lever, at least one, if not two. You usually don't need two if you're a mountain biker or you've got wider tires, but you may need two of the tire levers if you've got a skinny tire for road biking. You're going to want something to fill it with, either CO2 cartridge or a pump. So depending on what you want to use, there also is a great video on how to use this. It's quite simple, but a little nerve-wracking, because if you squeeze it in too tight, you might lose all your air before you get into the tire. And one thing that should be written boldly on all of them is this freezes so fast. If you've ever turned an aerosol can upside down and you've sprayed it, it freezes the can. It does that only like 100 times faster, and you will burn your hand. Speaking from experience. And then it's always best to have some kind of tool, multi-tool that has Allen keys, chain cutter, anything that will just help you out when you're out of the way. Next little tidbit is you're always, when you need, taking your back wheel off it's hard. It's very hard, especially if it's very hard. You've got all of the chain and the cassette and the derailleur to have to deal with. So the very first thing I'm going to explain to you is you're going to want to take your chain and move it to the hardest gear. for the smallest cog. So it's as far out from the tire as possible. And then you're gonna remove, and then when you don't have a stand where you can lift it up off the ground, you're gonna wanna turn your bike upside down. It's 100 times easier to do it. You don't wanna leave your bike like that. It gets scratched easily, especially the seat. But as long as you're careful, maybe definitely do it on the grass if that's an option. And you turn it upside down and it kind of just slides right out, and just be aware of where the cog and the chain meet. And that's that. So that really is the hardest part of changing a rear tire, is getting that darn tire off, or wheel off. Okay, and then the other final really great piece of information that nobody ever tells you is this tube. Well, to get this tube into this round wheel, it's quite hard. Once you get this piece in, it's like, oh, darn, this part's falling off. You get this piece in, it's falling off over here. Best thing to do is to fill it. It's maybe, you might not be an option when you're out on the trail, but if you can fill it with just enough air to get it its shape, it's a billion times easier to get it in there. And those are my tips for getting that in there. Always be prepared with some kind of tools. It's surprising how many people will help you out. And add air, so you've got a little bit of a circle to work with rather than a floppy tube. And make sure your chain, and this is just rear wheel, but make sure your chain is as far out as it can be. And then, we'll go with tubeless. It's the same thing when you're out on the trail. If you lose, sometimes you might lose the seating, and you'll lose all your air quite quickly, or you'll go, I went over a piece of glass this spring, and my tire, I didn't ruin it, but it wouldn't hold air, and I had to change it with a tube. So, and I didn't have a tube with me. Good thing my good friends did. And so if that happens, you either have to patch the tire itself afterwards and hope for the best, or buy a new tire. All right, any questions? Yeah, the video I will put up at the end, or the link. I'll also put the CO2 one up as well. Is there anything anybody else wants to learn? Like we will definitely go over the brakes as well. But yeah, more people have joined since we did the introduction. So I just wanted to make sure that I'm not missing anything from anyone. All right, moving right along. Okay, so third and final, disc brakes. Disc brakes are awesome. They stop you quickly. They have such a nice smooth squeeze compared to rim brakes. They are usually set it and forget it, but they can be a little finicky. One thing Susan had happen this winter, I guess the last few winters, her brake pads become contaminated over the winter, and she has to replace them. I don't know why, but that's something she's had trouble with. I like to clean my bike, and I clean it too much, and I've had trouble with my mountain bike. Is right now squealing very badly. I was actually going to bring it in and do it while we're doing this video, but it didn't happen. That's okay. I actually found some old an old brake caliper that came off of a bike here at the shop, and I've got an old rotor, and we'll clean these instead. We'll find out how to take out the brake pads. I'll get in closer when that happens, and how to clean them. But first, I'll continue with why they start to squeal. It's 99% contamination, and that's from, biggest thing is from oil, riding wet on a road and going through, you see oil spill type looks on the road, and getting that into the brake pads and getting them onto the rotors. And then it creates some kind of a smooth surface that just makes those brakes squeal. My cross bike, 2 weeks, well, it's been bothering me all summer, but I haven't used it until the fall here. My rear brake was broken. So it was leaking the mineral oil that runs through the caliper. It was leaking right onto my pads and onto my rotor. It was broken. I had to get a new one. So that was also awful because it was leaking just enough that it was contaminating all my stuff, but not enough to stop it from working or for it to, just not enough for it to stop working. And you couldn't really see it much. You'd see a little guck here, a guck there, and I'd clean it off and it would still not work. But anyway, that's 2 things that's happened to me. So where did that go? So this is what sits onto the rotor. And the rotor sits in between the disc brakes. The disc brakes, so you have to take your wheel out, and this will be sitting on your frame. And 9 times out of 10, there's going to be a cotter pin or pin that goes right through here. I took it out already, I don't know why. Anyway, and that holds the brake pads together. Once you take that cotter pin out, I don't know if you can see very well, it's black on black. There's a little hole here, and then you can once you take those out, take that cotter pin out, the pads just kind of pull out. There's one on the right, one on the left, and then there's a little spring that holds them together to keep them separate. Just give me a second. I'm going to try and move it my desk here. Okay. So these are the brake pads that you can't see very well. Sorry, guys. We can YouTube this afterwards, but I will show you anyway. So these are contaminated brake pads, black. Something you can't see very well. I'm just going to quickly get a good brand new pair, so maybe we can see a difference. This brake caliper was taken off of a bike for one of our customers. So again, I don't know how well you can see the difference, but the brand new one is kind of a shimmery fool's gold color, and the old one is, and the contaminated one is black and oily. When you take your brake pads off, or if you take your brake pads off, they will not be this pretty gold color, but they also won't be black like this one. And again, sorry, you can't see it very well, but we're gonna pretend. So to clean the brakes, you need sandpaper. This is a 100 sandpaper. Doesn't really matter. This is a rough stone type feeling, the pad. And you're going to need a clean rag, and you're going to need isopropyl alcohol. For the pads, you are just going to and it will turn gold again, especially if they're not too contaminated. But you're just going to take that dirt and grime layer off. They're very thick. They will last you a long time. Maybe not the front ones for me because I'm scared to go downhill, but that's okay. So these are the contaminated ones. And again, I know you can't see very well, but they are quite, they did clean up fairly well. So you're gonna put those aside, and then the rotor, which would be on the back of this wheel, but the rotor, you try not to touch that. That's something that if you're washing your bike down, you really want to stay clear from that. But if you do get something on it, a lot of times if you contaminate the brake pad, it will wear off onto the circle, onto the rotor, and it'll turn it black, and it will contaminate that as well. Same thing, you're gonna take a piece of, what we usually do is just take the piece off, because you got to get in between the wheel and the rotor. We turn it sideways and we just, and not heavy pressure, you're just trying to get grooves back into it. If it has turned a blue or a gray black, you're going to try and scrape that off a bit. You're roughing it up, really. Same as the pads, just to get that squeal away. So you're going to go around the whole rotor, and then you're wanting to get that dust off. So you're going to spray it with an isopropyl alcohol. We use isopropyl alcohol because it doesn't hurt anything else. You can technically use brake cleaner that you buy from Canadian Tire for your brakes, but it could eat your paint. It can contaminate other things. So the isopropyl alcohol is a nice, clean way to clean off the rotor. And then you're just gonna wipe off the alcohol, and you'll see that it's fairly dirty. Once you do that, you're gonna put it all back together. So this is the spring. Again, it's hard to see, but it kind of looks like a square C. And you're gonna put these two together. So that they have this, so the spring is in use. And you're gonna, then they'll kind of clamp like the tomper teeth that they used to have a long time ago. And you're gonna feed them back in through the bottom. And they do kind of click. There's only one way to get them in. I do not know where I put that cotter pin, but anyway. And then you're gonna put that cotter pin back in. You're gonna put your wheel back in, and that should solve the problem. If they've become too contaminated, you got a lot of oil into the pads, you may have to replace the pads. If you've gone too long with them squealing, you may even have to replace the rotor. Not as expensive as you might think, or at least what I thought. It's about $20 to $25 for the pads, and between $40 and $90 for the rotor, but you can go low or high. For the rotors, it's the size and then the different material that is used. So that's that. And I'm very, very quick. Sorry, guys. It's hard. It's hard to do when you don't have well, I know I have an audience, but nobody's talking. The grit of the sandpaper, I'm using 100. What we've been using at the store is Corey, who's one of the owners here. He does a lot of different things. So we just use any of his extra sandpaper. It's drywall, whatever you'd use to sand drywall would be just more than fine. And I'm reading the questions. Can you show us how to use a spacer for the front disc brake pad assembly? Yes, that's a very good question, Kathy. And then Darla, how does soap negatively impact? You know, soap probably doesn't as much as what I was doing this summer is using degreaser. Degreasers, I was using too much of it and it was getting into my pads. The soap is probably okay. You're just really gonna, when you're wiping down your bicycle, I'll get back. Or spraying your bike. And you can, that's another thing that people are worried about when they wash their bike is when you hose it down. You can hose it down, just not with a pressure washer. So if you do take it to a bike wash, you're never going to want to get the hose right into these anywhere where pieces meet the bike. Water gets into places that it shouldn't. But when you're washing your bike with disc brakes, you're just going to want to be really gentle in here and the water, and you're just using the water. And then you can use soap on this side, but you're just gonna wanna miss the rotor. You're gonna wanna miss the pads. You definitely clean over here. And the degreaser is the big one. So I was being overzealous. So that's that. And then, okay, so I'll just take this wheel off. Actually, I won't. We will use the spacer for Kathy talking about using the spacer to transport your bike. A lot of people have to transport their bike without their front wheel on. If you squeeze the brakes on a hydraulic disc brake bike without the rotor in between to stop them, they will squeeze up tight and you won't be able to get your rotor back in. You can just use a screwdriver to pry them apart, but that's not always nice on your disc brakes. So any bike shop will give you one of these. They come with every bike that we get. We have bags and bags full of them here, and you're just going to shove that. When you take your wheel off, sorry, you're going to go to the front tire, and I know this is hard to see. You're going to take this front wheel off, and then in back here, you're going to just replace that rotor space with this plastic piece. And then if you accidentally squeeze the brakes, it's not an issue. Yeah. So, does anybody have any other questions? Any issues you've had over the summer? Would you like me to show you the wheel? Tire change. That's something I could do. What else? You know, those are all mainly the things that you can do, especially over Zoom. Last winter I did 4 different maintenance clinics: cleaning your bike, gears and shifting, tire changes and different types of tires, and there was one other, can't remember what it was, braking. So it's something that is fun to do and learn. Should we adjust our cables and shifting on our own? If you have a good feel for it. So here's a nice little tip. If your chain cannot get up to the easiest or the biggest ring, your cable is too loose. If it's having trouble staying on the hardest or smallest gear, your cable is too tight. And there's other factors involved in that. Usually if your shifting changes drastically from one ride to the next, it's because your hanger has bent. 9 times out of 10, you've had a fall or dropped your bike and your hanger is bent. So what your hanger is, and again, I'll take this off. Your hanger holds your derailleur, so this is your derailleur, onto your bicycle. And the hanger is there to bend because you don't want to bend your frame. A hanger costs $25. A frame is priceless. No, a frame is so much more expensive. So it's just this little lip here that hangs down. And if something, if you bang or hit here, it will bend. If it bends, then your derailleur moves into the wheel, and then your chain is going right over the edge. If it doesn't normally bend this way, but you never know, it can happen. If that happens, then you're not getting up to the easiest gear. So long story short, I would say probably not. It's not a good idea because there's those two factors involved. Cables and shifting are, if you can remember that it's not tight enough to go up to the biggest, too tight, it's not going down to the lowest. It's not gonna, well, you know, I'm gonna take that back. It really is not something you can hurt. So if you don't mind, it costs, so at the shop here, it costs $15 per derailleur. So if rear derailleur isn't working well, it's $15. If you need the front derailleur fixed as well, it's another $15. So if you're more than willing to play and figure it out, that you might have to spend $15 or $30, go for it. It's nothing you can hurt, and you will learn something. All right, hangers. Some bikes come with hangers. If you're going on a long trip, Kathy, yes. If you know you're going, like if you're going cross country, that is definitely something you would want, is an extra hanger. They are very specific to bikes. So if they, but Kathy, they don't bend to break. They bend to bend back. So most times you can fix it. They do break, don't get me wrong, but most times we can fix it. Here is the tool. So basically you put this on the wheel and you measure the top part of the wheel from the hanger to the bottom part of the hanger. And if it's wider or narrower between the top and the bottom, you have to straighten the hanger and you literally bend it. It's just made out of steel. Okay. And I will show you the bolts to do. Yeah, so the hanger, only if you're going on a long trip and you know you might need it. Otherwise, we can usually bend it back. Okay, so tightening the bolts to tighten. Again, let's bring this closer and see. If we can. All right. So this part right here that's holding the handlebar. So here's the handlebar. This is called the stem. The stem has all of the bolts that you need to tighten. So usually there's either 2 or 4 on the front here that you're tightening onto the handlebar. And there's usually 2 here on the back of the stem. So 1 here, 1 here, and then we've got 4 here. And they are 5 Newton meters if you have a torque wrench, or just a good solid. Okay, yeah, that's not going anywhere. And then the other 2 places that you can tighten is the seat post. But this, you don't need to mess with that. Your seat. And again, you're just going to want to, it's a bigger one here. You're just getting in there with an Allen key, which is hard with that silly. And you're, again, good twist. Make sure that it's not going anywhere. And there's usually 2, sometimes there's only 1 bolts on the seat. And that there's 2 here, so you can change the seat angle. Okay. Well, it was a little early. I didn't plan the timing completely perfectly, but I will put up the YouTube videos on the notes. And if anybody has more questions, please write them down and I will get to them. I might go through lubing the chain again too, because that's another important one. Can't remember where my notes are. I had to switch computers in between because mine didn't have a great camera. All right. Okay. Yeah, I love talking about this and the mechanics. I'm just not used to the Zoom thing. I actually went to school when I moved to Edmonton, or sorry, when I moved from Edmonton to Saskatoon. I wasn't working at the time because I was home with my children, and I knew I would need to find my people. So I ended up going to Denver for 3 weeks, and they have a bike mechanics class there called Barnett's Bicycle Institute, and it was awesome. So that was how I got started, and I was so happy to find my job and so happy to move to Saskatoon because I probably wouldn't have done that if I stayed in Edmonton. And I'm still loving it even after this crazy COVID, but it's been great. So let me find almost to my notes, sorry guys. So if you're a BCW member or a past member, please remember to email Susan, and she's got some great prizes because she was hoping that a lot of people would show up tonight. So make sure you give her an email and tell her what you thought about the class, and you're entered to win some prizes. I think it's one per, yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. It's one per class with Keely, Mel, and I. So yeah, that's what very exciting thing too. It's different local businesses throughout the city. Okay. Okay, so here's my 2 YouTube videos. I'm gonna put them in the notes. Copy. One is changing a tire, and one is using a CO2 cartridge. So that is that. Thank you guys, everyone, for coming. Again, if you have any questions, I am at Bruce's Cycle Works. You can give me a call. You can call myself, or you can call anybody that works here. We love helping people out. It helps us out and keeps you coming back. So thank you, and thank you, Sarah, for letting me do this. I hope everybody has a great night.